Hello and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about how to flip 360 inventories into effortless marketing tools without revisiting the property. It will be presented by myself, Richard Abbots. I'm the founder here at Inventory Hive. For those of you who don't know who Inventory Hive are and what we do, we're a paperless cloud-based platform for the creation of property inventories, interims, checkouts. We do pre-arrival document serving and also, of course, allow users to create marketing tours via 360 cameras. So today's webinar is very much introducing how 360 inventories can add value, how using 360 cameras can save time for letting agents, for inventory clerks, landlords, when out in the field. So specifically, we're going to cover, why you might want to use 360 inventories or 360 technology. We're going to look at some examples of those. We're going to look at how 360 photos are used in the event of a dispute. Let's face it, inventory reports are there to demonstrate compliance. They're also there to demonstrate condition and cleanliness. But of course, it's important to understand that the results you create can hold up in the event of a dispute. So we're going to look at a quotation, for instance, from our partners over at TDS via Steve Harriott, how they view 360 inventories. We're going to look at how you need to create what you need to create 360 inventory gallery tours. So what kind of kit would you need? Then we can look at a brief 3-step demo of using our effortless 360 camera integration. And then finally, we're going to end up with how you can flip 360 inventories into gallery tours without revisiting the property. So it's very straightforward to do that. And, I suppose before we go into the body of the webinar itself, it's probably important to consider that if you think about an inventory and the point in time that it's created prior to a tenant moving into the property when it's vacant, so when there's no possessions inside. Now, of course, that's a great opportunity to capture marketing photos as well, because it shows the property as an empty shell, which is really useful for a prospective tenant or resident looking at renting that property. They can perhaps visualize what their possessions might look like inside the property. It also, of course, makes rooms look much bigger when there isn't possessions inside them. And often marketing photos are done when there are possessions in situ. So the actual timing of that is very good. So, but, without further ado, let's briefly, and I don't want to labor the point too much on the webinar today about inventories, but of course, this is all about 360 photos, and it's about how you can flip those images and recycle them for marketing tools at the end. So it is relevant, I suppose, to start by saying, if you were to create a 360 inventory, what are the benefits of using that technology? So first and foremost, it reduces the time spent inside a property. So if you take a 360 shot, you can effectively navigate the room and space later from your app or from your desktop to complete the details. So here we've got the front cover of one of our reports. And if I just click on this, it's going to take me through into a sample Inventory Hive inventory. In this case, a check-in inventory report. So as you can see, what we have here on the front cover is we have all the pertinent information that a reader of an inventory might want to see. So what's inside the report, what's the address, when was it created? But also as well, we've introduced these 2 new buttons here. So the first one is to view a photo gallery. So this is a really neat way that within all of the inventory reports we have on the platform, if you click on an image, it opens up that high definition sort of online gallery. But we've also got a new button in here to view 360 gallery tour. Now I'm just going to click on this because staying on that point that we just mentioned, how can you speed up time inside a property? Now, if you are using 360 camera technology, you can effectively set your walk around order. In this case, you can see on the left-hand side here, the first room or space that you would enter in the property is the entrance hallway, followed by the living room, which in this case, from this 360 is this room just here. But if you go into the property and you set your walk around order, if you capture a 360 image, or in our case, you can take up to 4 360 images in each room and space, which is good if you've got maybe an L-shaped room or some blind spots. The whole purpose of that really, you take your 360 image, you go round to the next room and you do the same again. Now, of course, you can also capture some standard photos whilst you're going. So shots of the oven, meter readings, etc. Images where you would actually need a still image and not just rely on a 360. So, but in doing so, it means that later on, you can navigate that room or space remotely. So in this case, I can say, right, okay, I can look at the light fixings, I can see where the smoke alarm is situated, I can see that there's a light switch and an alarm keypad. I can see all that information by navigating the 360 image. So that means that I don't physically have to spend my, an hour and a half inside that property noting everything down whilst I'm in the property. I can do it remotely later on. Now, that is a significant benefit of 360, that unless, of course, you've used it, you wouldn't necessarily know that to be the case. Because I think sometimes the notion can be, or certainly in the early days when we started bringing in this technology, that it's perhaps a bit of a gimmick. It certainly isn't for doing that kind of report, particularly if you're a busy letting agent or inventory clerk and you're maybe doing 4 or 5 reports in a day. It can be a real value to go in, take your 360s, take your standard shots, note anything that you might want to note whilst you're in the property, but then you can get out. In some cases, we know clerks that are back home or back in the office by lunchtime, and then they sit there from the comfort, have a cup of tea or coffee, and then populate the information remotely. So that is a significant benefit worth noting with 360 inventories. The second one, and it's some of these I suppose are stating the obvious, but you can capture the entire room in one picture for a robust before and after comparison. So if you've done an inventory report with a 360 image, when you subsequently then do a checkout, maybe 6 months, 12 months, 2 years later, whenever that may be, you can have 360 images side by side inside a room and space. Now that can show decor, location of items, if items were left behind, and that 360 really enables you to capture that without the need to take 50 photographs, 50 standard photographs. So of course, stating the obvious there, it reduces the time spent taking numerous photos. Of course, you would always take a standard photo showing a specific defect or an item that's in common dispute, which could be the oven, it could be the sink, the toilet, but that's really quick and simple to snap as you're going. And you can do that whilst you're connected to our 360 camera, which we're going to show some examples of shortly. So the next thing to note then is 360 photos can reduce the file size of the reports that you create, which is good if you're saving them locally or uploading them to a CRM. And of course, they also allow adjudicators to get a much better perspective of a room or space. It's really important that if an inventory has to be used in the event of an adjudication, it's really worth considering that that adjudicator has never been to that property. They've never been inside that room and space. So having a 360 really gives them a perspective for the location of an issue. It gives them perspective for the property in general. So it's really useful in that respect as well. As we always say, though, it's really worth balancing 360 photos with the written word. Don't purely rely on 360 images. You always need that written word to say things like the doors intact, front, side and reverse, the ceilings free of marks and mold. That written word can never be replaced by photos, videos or 360s. You always need to have that to have a robust report, and of course always focus on that condition and cleanliness. So those are the only couple of things that perhaps I would caveat in there in mentioning that. So I don't want to, as I say, make this all about the inventory report itself. So we're going to move on to a bit more of the 360 stuff in a bit more detail now. But if I just scroll through this report very quickly, it's just to show you how, and here's a really good example. So if I just zoom in on this here, so here we've got a report that's got some good written descriptions in there. But as you can see, there are not 10 photographs of the keys. There's a few photographs here of the door, but actually you can see that a couple of those photos, if I scroll down in a second, were added by the tenant within our paperless process. So as you can see, though, there's only a handful of standard photos taken here, and that's only really possible with by having 360 images, because you do negate the need to take lots and lots of unnecessary standard photos. So let's just jump back into the presentation and let's have a look at that question that I posed at the beginning, where we were looking at the content of the webinar today. So how 360 photos are used in a dispute. Our partners over at TDS, or Steve Harriott over at TDS, has asserted that 360 images are useful in showing the adjudicator the general layout and presentation of a room. They supplement the written word well and allow an adjudicator to look at the size of a room and the detail within. Our system allows an adjudicator to access 360 images and therefore rely upon them during an adjudication. So if there were, in the worst case, some kind of dispute, these reports can be uploaded, the Inventory Hive report could be uploaded into the TDS portal, and they can then view those images remotely in order to include them in an adjudication. But as I said before, it's a caveat, it never negates the need for a good written description and the need for standard photos in certain situations. Like you wouldn't take a 360 photo of a meter reading as an example. You would just take a standard photo of that. So it's about having a balance, and it's about working efficiently. So in terms of creating 360 inventories that you can then export into gallery tours, which, as I say, we're going to show demos of that in just a moment. But what kit would you need? So first thing you would need, of course, is a smartphone or tablet with the Inventory Hive app installed. Now that could be either on an iOS, on an Apple device, or an Android device, such as a Samsung, for example. And that's needed to connect directly to the 360 camera and tag the images to the correct room and space of the property. Now, this is really important. It's okay in a lot of instances capturing 360 images, but it can sometimes, if you're capturing that on the 360 camera on its own, that can give you a real headache down the line, because you've then got to work out where that image related to, what room were you in, what property was it taken in. Whereas with the Inventory Hive app, you don't have any of that. You actually connect to the 360 camera and then tag the images as you go. So if you're at a certain property address and you're in the kitchen, you are tagging that image to the kitchen at that property, which means you don't have to then do that later on when you connect it to your computer, because you can just simply upload it when it's all done. So, and as I say, we are going to see a demo of that in just a second. But the second thing, of course, you need would be a compatible 360 camera. Now, we support the Ricoh Theta devices. We support 3 models, the SC2, which isn't currently on our site. We just need to update our list at the moment. We support the SC2, we support the Ricoh Theta V, and the Z1. Now, they all vary in price. I would probably say, you know, as a starting point, if you're looking to get familiar with this and start to introduce yourself, I personally would say, and I think the team could vouch for this as well, the Ricoh Theta V is a really great entry-level device. The image quality is very good. It also allows you to update that camera via an app as well, which makes it very simple to update. And the transfer speed is good as well. So in other words, when you take an image on that camera, it transfers into the Inventory Hive app, you know, inside 10 seconds. It really is quite quick. So it's a great device, one that I can recommend. The Z1, of course, is also a very good device, but you know, perhaps more expensive, you know, if you're looking to get started. The image quality is good on the Z1 devices as well as it is on the V. I would probably say the V is more than sufficient though, because in some cases the Z1 images, they're very good, but they're only as good as the screen they're being viewed on. And we personally find there's not a huge difference between the two. So you would also need a tripod for mounting the camera as well. That's the third and final thing you'll need. Now, in the image that we've displayed within the presentation, you can see we've used a Smattree device, which is one that you can find on Amazon. It literally extends and folds away really neatly, and pop it in your bag. So nice and simple. And finally, as well, a little tip that we would assert as well is it's worth purchasing a power bank for recharging devices on the go. Because if you're not used to doing 360 inventories or tours, you've got to rely on charging your kit up on the go sometimes. And therefore, we would recommend getting a charger pack, a power bank. But we've also come across some devices, and you can pick these up on Amazon, whereby you can double up a power pack that's also a light as well, that allows you to recharge it, which is good in the winter months in a property where maybe a light's out in a room. They're really handy to carry around with you. And again, these things, you know, this tripod retails, I think, less than £20 now, and I think you can pick this one up for about £20–25 too. So worth considering those things, because when you're getting into doing 360 inventories and tours, it's really helpful to make sure that you cover yourself by having the right kit. Okay, so let's move into the demonstration aspects of the webinar now. So the first thing to consider when you're arriving at a property, you've got your bag with you with your 360 camera in and your kit. What would be the first thing that you would do? So the first thing that you would do as with any inventory or any tour, is you would set the walk around order of the property. So you would organize the rooms and spaces in a way that you would want the reader to view them when they're viewing their report or their tour. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, underneath the thumbnail of the house image, you can see we've got entrance hallway, followed by some images, 1, 2, 3, and then living room, balcony, kitchen, etc. Now, that order is set by the order within our app. Now, as you can see on this screen recording here, I've just moved up the living room and lounge by just moving this handle up and down. So it enables you to set the order by moving that up and down on the left-hand side. You can then add a room as well. So in this case, I'm going to add the back garden because it was missing from my list. And that's often the case when you get to a property. You don't really know the order until you're there. But you can then simply add that in and reorder those rooms and spaces accordingly. So that's the first thing that you would do when you're doing an inventory or you're doing a tour, and the two sort of work together. So whatever order you set for your inventory, that will set your 360 walk around order as well. So it's nice and simple. Okay, so the second thing that you would do, and this is a really simple step, you would literally screw the camera onto the top of your tripod and then position it in the center of the room. Really straightforward to do that, literally take you 30 seconds. The only thing worth also noting as well is just think about where you position the camera. There are going to be blind spots, for instance, as you can see on the left-hand side here, if you've got an L-shaped room, you are going to maybe miss this half of the room. And that's why we allow you to take up to 4 shots of the room so that you can make sure you capture all those blind spots in there. So also, once you hit the power button, which as you can see is just this button here that's just lit up, once you turn that on the device, that will then start to try to create a connection with your device. So step 3 is connecting to the device and capturing those images. So literally all you would do, you've turned your camera on, you would tap into the rooms and spaces section. In this case, as you can see from my order before, I'm going to go into the first room, the entrance hallway. I'm then going to go into the general overview section. It then takes me through and shows me the Connect 360 button. So I connect, tap on that, and then it gives me a button. I press on Wi-Fi settings, and then it gives me a list of connections that are available. I tap on the Theta connection. It then takes me straight in, and the Inventory Hive app is now connected to the camera. It's showing me the images on the gallery, but I'm actually going to hit take a photo, and then it will take maybe up to 10 seconds, but it will capture that entire room and space in one shot. And it then allows me to have a look at that. I can navigate around if I want to, and then I can select it if I'm happy, hit the green tick, or then hit the red cross if I'm not. And then I can also, if I wanted to, take some standard photos there and then as well inside the Inventory Hive app. So I'm just going to say, right, I'm going to take a couple of random snaps here. Added those in for me. Then I can just hit save and next, and there we have. I've captured the entrance hallway. So the next thing I would do, of course, is move into the next room and then take my 360 and then the next room. I would strongly recommend that you do all of that back to back, because once you're connected to the camera and you set your walk around order, you're better off going around capturing your 360 images before you do anything else. So if you're one of these people that likes to do the inventory whilst you're at the property, then of course you could take your 360s in each room and then go back to the entrance hallway and then start doing your descriptions if that's how you'd like to do it. But I would strongly recommend whilst you're connected to the camera. And that's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, once you've done it, you know you've got your 360 images. So if something did come up, you had an urgent phone call and you had to leave the property, you've got your 360 images that you can capture the image from, the inventory from remotely. And of course, it also conserves the battery of the camera, because if you're connecting, taking a 360, spending 20 minutes in that room, then you go on to the next one, reconnect the camera. Each time you've connected to the camera, you will start to drain the battery. I mean, the battery life of these devices is very good, don't get me wrong, but when you're going from property to property throughout the day, you want to just make sure you're working in the most efficient way. So the next thing, of course, so let's just imagine now we've done an inventory, we did it today, and the tenant moved in, and then let's just imagine we're fast forwarding 6 months or 12 months time, and that particular tenant has moved out of the property. And you actually want to then take those 360 images on their own. You want to exclude them from any kind of inventory and share it with a prospective tenant. You know, if you're an agent or if you're an inventory clerk and you're doing it on behalf of the agent, you can export those images out for them and they can then use them as a gallery tour to share with prospective tenants. And it's really straightforward to do that. As you can see, I'm logged in on our web browser of the software. I've got an example property on here, and I've got an inventory that was created. I just hit on the cog. I then go into this create a share link option. I can then export that out, and here I have an exported 360 gallery view of the property. Now, this of course means that the prospective tenant can navigate each image. They can have a look around. They can go into different rooms if they wanted to. So in this case, go into the front garden and have a look around. Really straightforward. And of course, as mentioned before, the idea of this is that you don't see all those possessions that you would if these images were captured while somebody was in the property. So really straightforward to do all of this. Now, it's also worth considering as well that the Powered by Inventory Hive will show on a standard subscription, but your logo would always show here if you're an agent. Now, if you're an inventory clerk, and you had custom branding, perhaps this would be your brand all showing on here, but it would be the agent's logo if you have them set up as a branch. And the same with an agent. If you had custom branding set up on your account, then these color schemes and everything would be set purely as your brand as well. And the user can tap on here, see the phone number and an email address as well, which is all set based upon the branch on the account. So very simple to export all that information. So that literally concludes the webinar for today. So as I say, if you're new to Inventory Hive and you want to find out a little bit more, you can go onto our website and do a chat 24 hours a day. You could give us a call between the hours of 9 to 5, and that's the number just on the screen here. Or of course, if you wanted to set up a free trial, you can do so. Just hit the Get Started button. Existing users, by all means, if you've got any questions around this functionality, you can hit the support area and search for all the library articles or the webinar content. Or of course, if there's something that's maybe a bit obscure and you want to ask a question, just hit a support ticket in there and then the team will come back to you. So that concludes everything for today. So thank you everybody for taking part, and hopefully see you on another webinar soon.